pretty much, we are going to take an inch, which is only this big, from about there to there, and we are going to blow it up so that it's really big so we can take a really close look at it. So here's my big inch, because, okay, there's your big inch, and I want you to draw it as straight as you can. You can even use your ruler there. And I want you to make these little endpoints as dark, a nice thick dark line here. Let's pretend this is 1 inch, so it goes from 0, and there is 1 whole inch. Okay. Now you'll hear me say this a bazillion times. Now I want to do, again, Caitlin, those of you, I want it to take almost the whole width of your piece of paper. You cannot draw this big enough. So if you have to, start a new page, because it needs to be very big, otherwise it's all going to get smushed together. If you did it in pencil, I want it to take up the whole piece of your paper. I want it to be that big. I don't want it to be narrow now. Yeah, it needs to go from red line almost to the end, as big as almost possible there. I just need you to, because we need to magnify this really big so we can see things there. Everybody got it?
No.
Give you a chance to draw it. If you do a nice straight line, that would be good. Again, make these end ones really kind of dark so that you know it's the end there. And you'll hear me say this like it's. Now, I didn't want you to draw it all the way on the bottom of your piece of paper because we're going to have to write stuff underneath of it there. I just needed to be there. I mean, we got a lot of writing to do underneath here. So you might want to leave yourself, that's fine, Alex, yours is probably good enough. But you're going to need at least a couple inches down there. I'm just saying. Or you can probably do it above it. But. Okay, back when somebody made an inch, probably hundreds, if not, well, many hundreds years ago, we didn't need to measure really, really small things. So apparently 0 to, an inch, which is about the distance between a couple knuckles of your first finger there. It's about an inch. Whatever it is. It's a good way to measure it. It's about an inch. Well, as time goes on, we had this 1 inch, and somebody said, well, what if we want to measure something smaller than an inch? Well, we had no other measurements there, so the guy said, well, okay, let's make what we call a half an inch. Okay, so here is our 1/2 inch mark. Okay, and the reason why our way of measuring compared to the rest of the world is so difficult is because our way of measurement unfortunately deals with a lot of fractions. And if you're like 90% of the people in the world, fractions can be kind of hard. Okay, a half is pretty easy to figure out, but the problem is if we're going to take a half and go smaller, guess what had to happen? Well, you had to take the halves and cut them in half. And if you take a half and cut it in half, you've got what? Okay. This blue one is the 1/2 inch mark. I guess I should have done this. Okay. In blue here, 0 is the same thing as having 0 halves, right? And 1 is the same thing as having how many halves? 2 halves, right? Because if you have 2 halves, you have a whole. Okay, but when we go to the 1/4 inch marks, here's the problem where it comes in here. If I cut an inch into a 1/4, how many different measurements do I have? I've got this one, this one, this one, this one. In other words, I have 0/4, correct? I have this one, which is 1/4. This one here, which is 2/4. This one here is 3/4 of the way over, and this one is 4/4 of the way over. Okay, and still it's not terribly bad, but it is. I'm going to see if I can't scooch this up. I didn't leave myself enough room. I'll just put it right here. Okay, and the problem with our way of measurement comes with this. When I measure this inch and it goes to right here, you're never allowed to say 2/4 of an inch. Okay, why? Because we always use the word 1/2 of an inch. And you're going to say, well, that's not so bad. Well, we're not to the bad stuff yet. And you'll see what I mean in a minute here. Let me erase this because it gets a little confusing. Hi, Jason. Anybody? Why isn't this here? Jason?
Might not have it big enough. My eyes to see if you
What?
might not be big enough. You can increase it.
I can increase. Alright. Well, and here's the deal, okay? At some point, 1/4 of an inch was not small enough. So then what do I do with each quarter to get smaller? I cut each one of those in half. Okay. And now I've cut my line into 8 equal pieces, so I've got those 8 measurements. I have 0/8, which is still 0. I have 2/8, I have 1/8 of the way here. This mark here is 1/8. This mark here is 2/8, and then I have 3/8, and I have 4/8, and you don't ever hear about 4/8 because it's the same as 1/2. I have 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and everybody's favorite, 8/8. Okay. And then your book doesn't give it to you, but because I gave you a ruler that has it, your ruler is cut into how many? 16ths, right? If you look at it, that means you take each 8 and cut it in half. You start to get a whole lot of little tick marks here. And you have 0/16, 1/16, 2/16, 3/16, 4/16, 5/16. Did you leave yourself enough room? 6/16, 7/16, 8/16, 9/16, 10/16, 11/16, 12/16, 13/16, 14/16, 15/16, and finally 16/16.
It's over.
Okay. And here again, by the way, you need to have all that written down. Absolutely. Here is the problem though. Okay. With our whole standard size of measuring is you're not allowed to say all those 16ths because there's an easier way to say almost half of them. If you look at it, you'll hear 1/16 you can say 3/16, you can say 5/16, 7/16, 9/16, 11/16, 13/16, and 15/16. Those are the ones that you can say because there's no easier way to say that. Okay, but if you measure something and it's 4/16, okay, the easiest way to say 4/16 is 1/4, because 1, 2, 3, 4/16 is the same as that 1/4 inch mark, and we always use the easiest fraction to say it. So you are allowed to say 1/4, you're allowed to say 3/4, but you're not allowed to say 2/4 because that's the same as 1/2. And so let me circle the 8s. You can say 1/8, you can say 3/8, 5/8, and 7/8. Okay, so I've circled all the ones that you're allowed to say. And the problem with that is this. See, when I was your age, I used to help my dad. He'd work on some cars. And cars have nuts and bolts on them. Anybody seen the commercial where the guy says, it's like having nuts without bolts. And the guy says, oh, what are these nuts for? He's got a pool there and a whole pool full of nuts. We don't need the bolts. But anyways, back then, all cars were, oh, by the way, you can use this one and this one. Back then, cars had nuts and bolts on them that were in this United States system. Now they're all metric, so we don't worry about it. But if my dad had a 9/16, he asked me to get him a 9/16 wrench, and he tried it, and it was too small, and he need a bigger size. Well, if it's 9/16, what's the next bigger size than 9/16? Well, you'd say 10/16, but there is no 10/16 wrench. Why is there no 10/16 wrench? Because it is 5/8. That's the same size, but we always use a simpler one. So you always had to think in your mind, oh, what's the next size bigger? You know, what's the next size bigger than 5/16? Or 5/8? What's the next size bigger than 5/8? 11/16. And it keeps changing from 16ths to 8ths to quarters. What's one size bigger than a quarter of an inch? Well, look at our quarter of an inch. The next size bigger is 5/16. So you keep having to switch from quarters to 8ths to 16ths. And that's the deal. If you measure a line, here's the deal. If you measure a line, let's say this line goes from here to right here, and I ask you how long that line is, how do you tell me how long that line is? Well, and here's what you can do. You can count every line as a 16th. It's 1/16, 2/16, 3/16, 4/16, 5/16, 6/16, 7/16, 8/16, 9/16, 10/16, 11/16, 12/16, 13/16. 14/16 is how long that line is, but if you told me 14/16, I tell you you're wrong. Why? Why would I tell you you're wrong if you say 14/16, Madison?
Because it's supposed to be 7/8.
Yeah, you have to say the simplest one of that, and it's 7/8. So you can't say 14/16, you have to say 7/8. Or if your line goes from here to here, and you count over, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's 10/16. But if you say 10/16, you're going to be wrong because 10/16, an easier way to say 10/16 is, Kayleen, what's an easier way to say 10/16?
5/8.
5/8, and you have to say the easiest way, otherwise it's wrong. And that's the reason why our whole English measuring system is not a good way, is because you always have to think about, well, if this is this, this is that. All right, how about this one? Let me get rid of those two lines. What if your line goes from here to here? How long is that line? Logan? It's a half an inch. Now, could you have said 2/4, 4/8, or 8/16, which are all the same? No. You have to say half an inch, even though that is exactly the same thing. What about this line here? How long is this one? From here to here. How long would that be? Sammy Bollinger? 1/4 of an inch. Could you have said 2/8 and 4/16? No, even though that's true. All right. Let me see if there's a line. Open your books to page 278. Look at line P. See line P down there? I want you to use your rulers and measure line P. Now what you have to remember, kids, is first of all, you're using the inch side, and you have to hold it above the line, and the left side of your ruler has to go right on that mark there. And I want you to measure and tell me how long that line is. And the first thing you do is say how many full inches it is. Let's get that down first. How many full inches is that line, Sammy? Okay, it's 3 full inches, so let's not worry about that. And then what fraction of the rest of the next inch is that? I need a fraction. Measure it up there. Everybody's hand should be up, otherwise I'm some sort of a failure. You're on the wrong page there, sir. You're measuring this line right here, line P. Measuring line P. Make sure that your ruler is starting. Yes. Congratulations. We got 3 full inches, and then what fraction of the next inch is there? What fraction of the next inch is there? Now we're using inches, so you guys are at the top. Make sure you're not using centimeter side, you're using the inch side. Inch side is on that bottom. Good. 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 Wait, this is the side. I can use the inch side, so you're using the bottom.
Did you happen to make dirty dishes in the?
Always. What's it look like? Wait, yeah, it's mine. I'm taking them out from my car today.
It's Monday, Mr. Hines.
Wait, and it's also my barbecue sauce. Now I'm gonna have to take it all back down there.
It's my barbecue.
Yeah, this is not Pepsi.
I know. Oh, the soup one I need.
Okay.
So we ended up with what? Let's see. Sammy Bollinger, since you gave us the 3, what?
1/4.
Okay, 1/4 is the exact answer. If you didn't get that, then you probably, your ruler wasn't in the right place, or you have something. Is somebody gonna say something else? What's one size bigger than 1/4? What if it was on the next one? It would be what? One notch bigger than that is 5/16.
Oh,
Measure the next one. Letter Q. Give me a letter Q measurement. Measure letter Q. Measure letter Q and write it down on your piece of paper so I know that you're not just pulling the leg there. Measure letter Q for me. And for letter Q, who wants to take the brave soul? Grace Watson says 2.5. Anybody not get 2 1/2? And then measure the next one. Measure letter R. Measure R is going to be a tough one. Letter R. Letter R. Maggie Dervis says 1 5/8. Did somebody get something else? 1 5/8 is correct. Very good. Everybody got that? Perfect. Now, unfortunately, that's only halfway there, but that's the hardest half. Okay. Also, in your notes, you have to have the metric system. And then the metric system, what is the unit we use on the other side of your ruler? Centimeters. 1 centimeter. And the beautiful thing about the metric system is everything is made in tens. Okay, so a centimeter, this is a big blown up centimeter. How many pieces is it cut into? Just 10. So it goes, here's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 10 millimeters that make up that 1 centimeter. Okay, 10 millimeters make up that 1 centimeter. And the nice thing is, you know, if you have a line that measures, well, let's say it measures 2 centimeters. To go from centimeters to millimeters, what do you think you have to do? If 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters, then 2 centimeters is, Maggie? 20 millimeters. Now, let's just take a look. What if I had a line, that went out to here? And I asked you to measure that line. How long is that line? Well, first of all, it's not even centimeters, but it is how many millimeters? How many millimeters is that line? And they make these really long lines in here because that's halfway. So how many millimeters would halfway be? 5. So this is how many millimeters? 6, 7, 8. This line is 8 millimeters long. By the way, how big really is a centimeter? It's about the width of your pencil or your pen. This little barrel part. Yours is a little bigger than a centimeter, but that's it. So let's just practice here. Give me a shot here. Measure A on top there. By the way, it says measure A in both centimeters and millimeters. Now the centimeters is the top part of your thing there. How many centimeters would that be, and then how many millimeters would that be? They give you the easy ones there. How many centimeters, how many millimeters? Sammy?
3 centimeters and 30 millimeters.
3 centimeters, 30 millimeters. How about letter B? They're way too nice on you on these. Kayleen, letter B is?
6 centimeters and 16 millimeters.
60 millimeters, correct. 6 centimeters. And letter C? Letter C. Sammy?
9 centimeters and 30 millimeters.
Sure. Now, what if I asked you to draw a line that is 45 millimeters? If I asked you to draw me a line that's 45 millimeters, how would you think about drawing that? How long is that line? First of all, how many full centimeters is it? How many centimeters is it? And then how many extra millimeters? I asked them how many full centimeters. 4, and then 5 more millimeters. So draw me a 45 millimeter line somewhere on your paper, nice and straight. Show me where it's at. This is it? It is 45 millimeters? I should have had you draw it. Then after that, draw me a line that's 1 5/8 inches long. Yeah. Then draw me a 1 5/8 inch line. 1 5/8. Where's your 45? You don't have to put a slash in the beginning of the line. 45 millimeters, and then one that's 1 and what did I say, 5/8. 1 5/8 inch line. Okay, this is supposed to be 45. You go 45. You're already just about 9 millimeters here. Or 90 millimeters and 9 centimeters.